Polynesian Broadcast. Special guest today. Still 95% sure. Hopefully take us higher, like Kelly Lee Owens will, with this song. GroundZeroPlus.com.
Higher and higher I go, lifting it up. I feel it
Here's Totem by Tycho, Polynesian Broadcast.
Cactuses drink from my veins. I know I am losing my mind. God knows I tried. At the edge of the wasteland, lizards lick my hand. picture of me.
Polynation broadcast live every weekend on groundzeroplus.com, 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Gonna have to bear with us for a second, folks. A little bit of technical difficulties. Also, I'm a Zoom retard, so it could be that. I do have a guest today, but we're figuring it out as we speak. Yeah, so we'll be right back. And don't worry, because there's also tons of good music. And it's gonna... We just need to figure out the right buttons to press. I think that's what it is. So, until we get that figured out, here's some more tunes. Mycelium of underground sound and information on the Polynation broadcast, groundzeroplus.com. We'll be right back.
Water dissolving and water removing. Recording in progress.
Fire department, they don't have a man at the department. Just wanna hold my hand. I say call the man. They say call which man? The fire department. I said the fireman. Baby, oh baby, I ain't got no food for you 'cause you ain't bringing no money home. You ain't got no money home, baby. Ooh, baby.
We got on the flute, we got a flautist. We got a flautist from Sacramento. She came all the way out here to Redwood Shores. All the houses look the same. All cash. Respect.
Polynation Broadcast, groundzeroplus.com. I think I figured it out with the help of my new friend, shaman, medicine man. I'm allowed to call him Gonzo, but Gonzalo Flores. Welcome to the greenhouse, my friend. Oh, wait a second. My bad. Say that again.
You're welcome, Paul.
There we go. Okay, we can
Okay.
hear you. Yay.
Great.
It's working.
Awesome.
Sorry, this is the first time I've ever used Zoom for a live show. Yeah, it's live radio, folks. Sometimes stuff happens. We figured it out. Thank goodness.
All right. I'm going to make you a host right now, Paul, so you can do whatever you want on that way. So unless you want to do other things to add on or however you want to do it, what do you want to do?
Oh no, we're good.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah,
all
we're
right.
live right now, and
Oh, cool.
yeah,
I love it. We're live right now.
we're
Live in
actually
studio.
live right now. Yeah, we're actually live right now. A little bit late, but that's okay.
Right.
We have a lot to talk about, man.
Yeah, sure.
We did talk briefly last night. Probably not as long as we should have. Otherwise, we probably would have figured this out. This was like one of the things we forgot to talk about. But what I want to do is to start off is give people your background and who you are and where you came from and how you got to where you are now. Just
Okay,
like
I would like to start out with an open song to invite everybody in as we're doing this show today.
oh yes, please.
I don't know how it's going to pick up on the sound with the reverb or whatever, but I think we'll probably work that out someday through. So
Let's
All
do
right.
it.
okay. Wate ya yo, wate ya ye, heo ahoka, blanco wate, heo ano, heo ane, heo ahoka, wanto wate. All right, there you go. Oma eusu now. Akaye esuneiwa. Oh, it's your ni ba de sunakwa. Gonzalo Flores, Elliot, oh, it's Paul Sinclair, that internet land, but that is a pollination show. That is yeah. With
Th-
all due respect, ancestors, thank you very much for having us here today. I'm on with Paul, my good friend, in the Paul Sinclair Show. Grant us protection as we deliver a message of hope and understanding for people to understand where they are in today's world. There you go.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Um, okay, so I guess I've always wanted to talk to a shaman or a medicine man or
So your video is off, you know that, right?
yes, I do know my video's off, but there is no video
Oh, it's okay.
currently on Ground Zero Plus.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I can see you, but I'm the only one that can see you who's listening. Whether that puts me at some kind of an advantage or not, no, I don't think so. Uh, what I want to ask you is, is there a difference between shaman, medicine man, and witch doctor?
My uncle would say the only difference is what part of the neighborhood they live in. But in all seriousness, um, those are three different vectors or approaches to looking at the spirit world. I think there's a tremendous amount of misunderstanding and going back a long way, everybody's been always arguing about what do you call us, what do you call you, that kind of thing. For
Mm-hmm.
example, maybe before your time, nobody called themselves a shaman. And then for those of us who were doing our practice, everybody was getting mad at all these academics because that's what they would be using to call everybody that here in Indian country in North Central South America. And, you know, we made a good point saying that's a big disrespect to the Mongolian people, the Russian people there, because that is their word. That is what they call themselves technically. But you know, as tradition goes, they ignored the brown people and they just made it a thing. So it became almost like branding at some point as well. So I don't, in the sense of where a person says, "Oh, I'm a shaman," it really just depends on, you know, what they really mean by that. I have a very specific definition. The reason why I like using that is because what's the purpose of identifying who you are? Is it for you to make yourself feel better and fill your ego? Or is it to get the message or the healing out to the person or the people and have them find you? And so, you know, we just take it at their own game instead of saying, oh, no, I'm this and this and getting hung up on it. Instead, you're saying, yeah, man, come on down. You know, this is what we do. Or as my uncle would always say, we put the V in vision, we put the J in journey. We own this part because we started it here, at least in this part of the world. And so I think at the end of the day, you know, everybody can be any kind of spirit healer. I think they are if they're born onto the planet in an incarnate body, meaning that they're in a physical body. It's just a matter of how they approach it and what they want to do. So the long answer is you can say they're all the same at different levels. I think on a very short answer, it's sort of like someone saying, I'm a general contractor. Okay, what does that mean? Do you do plumbing, sheetrock, electrical? Do you see what I'm saying? And
Yeah, yeah,
how much
yeah.
more do you want to get into that? But I think it's a good discussion to have again because it really does away with people who are just wanting to talk about a cerebral challenge. You know, it's like it's I hate to say it, it's academic, but I think where it's really at is how you help people and the effect you have on them. Because when they're talking to someone named Gonzo about the spirit world, you know they've already talked to the feng shui lady with the crystals. They've gone to their priest several times, rabbi, whoever. They've gone to their, you know, holistic healers. They've gone to everybody and they say, oh yeah, you need to go see him. They probably even went to a couple shaman and they said, oh no, you need to deal with something serious, which these are quotes I've actually heard from them as well as the people they refer to. Because when it talks about indigenous medicine and our healing ways, it is a very foundational and I think very, for lack of a better word, serious standard of what we do. I think every day we are in the spirit world, or as my grandma used to say, echun adiekwa, which is we're always dreaming. Whether you are awake or you are asleep, you're always dreaming. So your job is to figure out whose dream are you in? Are you in your dream or in somebody else's dream? And that's when it kind of gets weird sometimes. So
Well,
yeah,
yeah,
that
that.
helpful and just fleshing that idea, and I can go down the list to explain um, each of those distinctions that way. And I like to reframe it a little bit if that's okay with you.
Mhm.
Um, so I used to just do this in person only, just, come on down, or I go to your place, or I go to, if you're on a reservation, go there, go to your Hogan or your Kiva, wherever you did your healings. Sometimes it's in a school gym, other times at the uncle's house or whoever. And then, when COVID started kicking in and everything, it really drastically changed how we continue to be a people within our own tribe, with our own communities. And that's when I started learning how to use a little bit of this video online stuff like Zoom, for example.
Mhm.
And that was just to provide the continuity of the spiritual care and well-being for my tribe, the Lipan Apache tribe, and we're based in South Texas. And what that taught me is that there was a whole other level of understanding of when you're transmitting this information, or even providing enough of a presence and a healing to a person while you're talking to them online. And like anything else, I used to poo-poo this kind of stuff till I went, this is what people are doing. There's no reason why we can't look at this as well and make it work so the person does benefit from it. And so I created a thing called the Lee Penn Apache Show, and most of the time it was just about health statistics, what to do, because this is before the vaccine. This is before any of that came out, and a lot of our elders were dying, and during that whole horrible situation. Um, a lot of our personal lives were affected. I know a lot of different tribes, especially in the Southwest, all their original language speakers died. It was a shock, whole families wiped out, and people didn't know um, what was the right thing to do at the time, and it was very curious. And so when I got on the phone, we call it the moccasin line or the moccasin wire, and we really started reaching out. And since I'm biracial, I'm both Lipan Apache and Mexican American, I guess you can say that. But really isn't. That's just the nationality thing. On my mom's side, I am Lipan Apache through and through. Goes back forever. My On her side, my great grandfather introduced the peyote to the Lakota and the Crow Dogs and all those guys. And his dad, this would be my mom's dad's side of the family, he introduced the peyote to Kanaparker and the Comanches, and they later formed the Native American Church as we know it today. So that too, and part of the uniqueness to that is the peyote grows in my parents' backyard, and it grows there in South Texas uniquely. There is no other place in the world that it grows. It grows on that north side of the Rio Grande border there in South Texas, and just a little in the south in Mexico on the other side of that river. And that's it. No other place it grows indigenously. I think there are patches here and there that I do know of, but if you're doing one of those big university studies on flora and what plants are indigenous or native to a certain area, you click on peyote, and that's where it is, and nowhere else. And so I think that's part of the driver of how we're able to spread that, and bring it, as we say, north of the Rio Grande, so to speak, as a tribe. But as those things go, you don't know what's happening with a person when you're trying to reach out to them and what they need. So I'm an anomaly, and I think everybody likes to sometimes say that they're unique and novel, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But for me, I am both a traditional medicine man, that's in my tribe, as well as we call ourselves Anji. In Spanish, they call themselves curanderos. If they are typically Puerto Rican or Cuban, they're called santeros, or they practice Santeria. and a whole other mess with that too. And you don't find a person who usually does both in that field. You're either a traditional medicine man or woman, or you're the witch doctor, so to speak. And it's not to demean the idea of witch doctor, because in the Latino Hispanic culture, curanderos are the primary care physician. You know, they are the person who people go to first saying, should I go to the hospital? Do I do this? Do I do that? Because I don't know what the history of, I'm not familiar with it in Canada, because I think you're broadcasting from Canada. Um, but in the USA, it was, whites only for a lot of medical situations through the mid 1960s. There are no, there was no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They didn't allow African Americans, and they certainly didn't allow anyone of indigenous descent to be in the hospital as primary access. And so I think that's what people kind of have amnesia about, or forget, saying, "Oh, what do these guys know?" And goes, we were the ones that were there because the entire system rejected anyone who was a person of color, no matter how rich or poor they were. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, totally. And
Oh, so that's
it's almost as if you knew that I was going to ask you about peyote. Not peyote specifically,
wow.
but
Okay, yeah, yeah, no, I
but
hear you.
but
Yeah,
psychedelics, and we'll get into that a little bit
yeah,
later.
for sure. So
Um,
let so I'll rent. So circling back, just to not to bore the audience too much. So you got your traditional medicine man or medicine woman, and what
mhm.
they do is they do births, they do naming, like how what's my Indian name, what's my spirit name. They do a lot of ceremony things that are very important for their people, and sometimes for other tribes as well. That's not out of the ordinary to have. Let's say I have, for example, I have a cousin of mine who passed away not too long ago. He's a Sundance chief, and he introduced the Sundance to a number of other tribes up in Oregon, Nevada, and in Montana too, back in the early to mid 80s, and or had someone there and helped them get it started that way. And for us as Leaping Apaches, we don't traditionally do Sundance. That's more of a Northern Plains or the Southern Plains thing, but everybody kind of does it now. And it's sort of like someone saying, well, we traditionally don't do plumbing, but we're really good plumbers now, kind of thing. And so if you're good at, running that kind of thing, they're going to want someone who does that. So it's not out of the ordinary for someone of another tribe who historically didn't do that. But this is, you want those things done well, because people get killed or get hurt really bad if these sacred ceremonies aren't done correctly. Whether it be something as a simple, I hate to say simple, but something as a short duration of a sweat lodge,
Mhm.
all to 4 to 5 day type of Sundance, to a 10 day peyote ceremony. So there's a lot of moving parts that way, and you have to have people who are expert in those fields to know what to do. And every tribe knows this. There's not,
So
they're not going to hire someone who doesn't know what the hell they're doing, because it's not just bad luck from the spirit world. That's their own people. And you don't
well,
want to
you
have.
said that you mentioned that every tribe knows this, and this is
Yeah,
like you're in a unique position because you're half one thing and half another thing. Uh, Not to put it like so vaguely, but
yeah, let's put it that way.
did
Why
you
not?
did you notice
2025.
any similarities between like the way things are looked at in the like? Did you notice any crossovers? And would you expect those crossovers to go like globally all over the world, like back to a certain time period?
I did. That's a great question. So, short answer, yes, I do notice the crossover, and it actually comes down to something very unique that my tribe does. We're famous for several things. One, we're famous for introducing peyote pretty much to everybody. Two,
Nice.
we're world famous for tracking eclipses for the last 10,000 years. They even have these petroglyphs they have in West Texas about our people doing the peyote ceremonies with the eclipses at certain times. They go back 6,000, 8,000 years or
Wow.
whatever. And recently, one of our tribal members published it in some anthropology journal or whatever. But again, it just goes to show that, yeah, duh, we've been here a long time, and they've done enough genetic studies where, I think what it is is that I think they're going to find human history has been going on a lot longer than what we've found. That's really tying on that sentence. But the commonality I have found is one of the things that we're famous for. Like I said, we're famous for peyote. We're famous for predicting the eclipses. We do a thing with earthquakes that nobody talks about, and I don't blame them. We call it etumahu, which is a weather spirit medicine versus plant spirit medicine versus animal spirit medicine. And the other thing that we bring to the table or bring to the teepee is astrology. We are the only
That
northern tribe north of the Rio Grande that does Native American astrology. And the astrology is not astrology. I call it climatology, really, because it's about the spirit of what was going on in the season, the actual physical season, spring, summer, fall, winter, when that person is born onto this
it's
planet.
it's literally like you're predicting the questions I'm going to ask you. So just keep
Wow,
going.
it's
Yeah.
like my
No.
shaman or something.
No.
So this is not scripted, by the way, folks. This is really live and
Oh yeah, it's
um,
100% live.
so yeah. And I asked for the spirits to come in, even when we were having technical difficulties. What did I text you? I said it's not working. Okay, let me start drumming. Because
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
that's
Yep.
kind of what we do. It's even when I've done shows before with with Clyde Lewis when we do it before COVID, it was a couple of times like that, and that I'd bring my drum in the studio, and there would be something happening. All right, I'll start drumming, and it's not a. I mean, it might be showbiz for a lot of people, but for us, it's another part of reality that I think it brings people home going, right. That's the heartbeat of the earth. That
Well,
is who we are as a people that way. So when I talk about so-called Native American astrology, it is, you think of it in modern terms, it's an algorithm of time. And we measure time in a different sequence than what we know as the so-called Western time making. So I teach classes online now about this on through Zoom. And basically, I compare, let's say, the Western calendar. So that's the Western calendar established in 1582 by Pope Gregory. So we call it the Gregorian calendar. It's a base 10 math system. So that's 0 through 9. And it talks about a bunch of other things I mentioned in there. And the take home is that when they look at it, it's time is an agenda. Time is a schedule. Time is something to do. So comparing it to our quote unquote indigenous system of North, Central, and South America, it was established, they think now 30,000 years ago, because they keep finding these hieroglyphs that get older and older. And I'll send you a link later. I wanted to share this to you. They just found yet another old site that predates what they thought the Mayans were starting a calendar, and it predates another 1,000 years. And it was just published in Science, I think. And so it's, hardcore journal. These aren't, some, people putting their opinion out. These are archaeologists who've been digging for a long time, and they were shocked at the find they were looking at, because it was the first time they found a archaeological site that had no Mayan gods, that had no kings, rulers, nothing. It was the calendar, and the calendar looking at the sky, and four directions. It was way cool. And for my mineral fiends out there, meaning people who are into crystals and rocks and gems and all that stuff, they used blue azurite as the north selection. You don't use azurite as a stone usually for the medicine wheel in any tribe that I know. And here's something predating 1,000 years before the first Mayan kingdoms came into being at Chichen Itza and Palenque. So it threw me off, going, what the hell? So at the end of the day, you're looking at a timekeeping system that is very old. We don't know how old it is. We use a base 20 system, so that's 0 through 19 versus 0 through 9. It takes us only 3 symbols to define infinity, versus if we're using our Western math, so to speak, I think it takes 9 steps before you're able to computate infinity as a sign. So they were dealing with something here way longer than, the Greeks or the Egyptians, anything like that. So I find it curious that why were these people looking at this timekeeping so much? And so we look at different increments. Like if you want to look at Western astrology, you're looking at someone like Aries or Pisces or whatever it is, And what is that? Every 20 days, whatever it is, like you're a Pisces from this day to this day kind of thing.
It's 30 degrees in the sky. Every
There
sign is 30 degrees in the
Right.
sky,
There you go.
according to Western astrology. I was going to ask you if you've ever heard of sidereal astrology, or if that's the same thing as what you guys are already using.
Have I used,
So,
what's it called again?
sidereal astrology is basically you look at the sky, and each zodiac is a different size, right? So you base it on what you see in the sky. You don't base it off of a chart. You just look up.
Yeah, it's more, yes. The short answer is yes, but it's the longer answer is that when you're looking at calendar keeping is the traditional way of saying it. Instead of astrology, we call it calendar keeping.
That makes sense.
You're looking at the same set of data. So we our spiritual calendar, and this is the one that's really common for everybody. It's 13 days in a spiritual week, and there are 20 spiritual weeks in a year. So that's 260. People say, well, that what is that? That's not like whatever. I said, that's one set of calendar we use. Another calendar we use is what I call the corn calendar. It's a cool version of the Farmer's Almanac. That's your 365.25 days per year. Except having 12 months, you have 18-month increments, which is a lot closer to the agricultural planning and that kind of thing versus this weird, 30 days except during a leap year or whatever. So, the another calendar we use is a calendar called the Lord of the Night, which is a whole other thing to deal with people's dreams and nightmares and whatever. We also use a lunar calendar, which has to do with the moon and its moon cycle. And the last calendar is what we call the long one, and that goes out to 26,000 years. And
So,
so the same calendar that's used with the Hopi and the Mayans and us, the Apaches, and people down in Brazil, it's the same algorithm. We're
how do
looking
you,
at the
how
same
do you
set of.
develop a calendar that's that long of an increment of time?
That is a good question because I'm going, damn, these guys figured this out. And I look at it like this. You've heard like old people talk about going, oh no, look at those kids. They're never going to get it. They're never going to understand. I'm sure you've heard my people used to tell me that. Oh no, this is the future kind of thing. And I'm sure our ancestors said the same thing. Oh no, this is the future. Okay, let's put it in stone. So at least they'll remember what's going on that way. So it's still perplexing in some ways because the assignment of what some of these computational numbers mean. People saying, "I don't understand. This cycle of why are they focusing on this thing of a 63 days cycle? What the hell is this?" And everybody used to think it was about a thing what we call a burner day, and a burner day is essentially your cross quarters. I'm just using Western terminology. So cross quarters is basically the halfway point between, let's say, the equinox and the solstice. So we have our own version of that, and we call it a burner day. And whether it be for the calendar year, spiritual calendar, or whether it be for your own hieroglyph itself and when your own personal burner day is. So there was, of course, they keep digging deeper and deeper into the planet, and they keep finding older and older hieroglyphs. And some of these things have maybe five or six kind of petroglyphs. So you think of it like kind of think of like Egyptian type of hieroglyphs. That's a good way to think about it. Except sometimes you'll have a stone that has maybe 10 or 12 little figures. Other ones will have 200, unique things, but all of them have the time. They have the little dot or the line or whatever it is. And it was fascinating to as you look at this, and they figured this out maybe about 10 years ago. That so-called burner day thing actually had to do with a very specific time watching of the 63-day cycle that's directly linked to the synodical cycle of Saturn. And like, what the hell does that have to do with round tortillas, And so every day I think about going, how did these guys figure out that this was the the base number, not prime, but the base number to get that extrapolation? And they went back, they found hieroglyphs, stones, and they can date them enough. So it's like you're looking at things from 500 AD, 400 AD that talk specifically line per line. Okay, so this was the day of this burner day. We're going to move it one more day forward because the king son was born that day or whatever. So it was interesting. They give commentaries
Right.
about these. So it's not these the ancient Mayans or whatever. It's still living, and we're still doing commentaries. Now we're just
Yep.
doing it digital versus in stone.
There is another thing I wanted to ask you while we're on the topic of writings and stuff like that. I've always kind of had this gut intuition that tribes of ancient cultures didn't put that much emphasis on actually writing things down because they knew there was a better way of passing that information forward through
Absolutely.
things like prayer, ceremony, and song, and
Right.
music specifically.
Right.
How do you think that music is used in shamanism today to execute any form of healing, or is it even used in the first place? And is there certain kinds of music that are played at certain times of the year using these astrological, angles that you're talking about?
Answer yes and yes. And so the first one is it used? Yes, it is. And it really depends on, again, the timing. So that's why other tribes, as well as my own tribal members, they ask me, hey, Gonzo, can you compute this? Or what's a better day to start this? And it's usually within a couple of days, but you want to be as precise as possible because when you're doing the song, it's really an invocation. You are conjuring something. I mean, I don't care what people say. They go, oh no, we're just praying. I said, you're tapping into the spirit world.
Right.
And it's whether you believe in a figure that looks like Andy Gibb from the Bee Gees, or whether it's a white Saint woman or white buffalo calf woman, or Selu or Kali or whatever. It's still the spirit world, and we're still a subspecies of primates. So we really don't really get that. So we have people historically, like myself and friends, that would go up to the top of the mountain, get struck by lightning, and bring it down to the people saying, okay, there's going to be a famine next year. Okay, they're going to invade us in 4 days. Okay, here comes the rain or whatever. And so I'm putting this, Reader's Digest, Cliff Notes version, but
Of course.
that was the job. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm just a messenger. You had to gather they were scientists in their own right. They looked at a tremendous amount of data or a download, and they had to distill it. Or as my rapper friends would say, squeeze it and hone it so people would understand what was going on in the first place. So when you're looking at different songs or shamanic sounds, I guess, for the ritual, absolutely. It's always with the beat. Typically, it's a 6 or an 8. Sometimes there's a 7 beat, but mostly it's one of those. And it depends on the type of ritual / ceremony that you're doing and the time of year. But you will always find those differences at our public gatherings. To really kind of put a fine point to it, you know what a powwow is, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
totally.
powwows weren't legal till 1979 here in the U.S. That's way late in the game, man, for a lot of stuff. And so I used to get mad about it. Then after a while say, oh man, those poor vendors, they could have made a killing back in the early 70s. Oh well, anyway, so the whole point, that's a joke. So then the main thing is that you do talk about terrible things, but you want to make it a little funny so people can remember not to be afraid, because if you're there to provide a message, or more importantly, you help their soul come back home, because that's really, I think, the job of the spirit healer, whether they're a hardcore shamanic person living off the grid and living on a cliff, or whether they're hanging out in Portlandia, as I am. That's what their job is to take care of their people and take care of people who are there in need. The way to look at the sound part is that it really is the tone. It's the vibration itself, and some people think it's the vibration that hits the body. Other folks, they think it's the real sound is the in between notes that are silent. So there's a bunch of ways to it, and that's minus.
And also there's
That's
the
minus hallucinogenics. That's minus any of that. That's what you do. That's even before the smoke, man. That's
But
before the fire.
there's
Before
also the act of making a certain tone with your own vocal cords that can resonate through your whole body, right? As
Oh,
long as
sure.
you know
Yeah.
what the note is to sing,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
a shaman is, I guess, going to be able to guide you as to what note you need to sing.
Right, and that's why it's important for those guys to be clear. And I don't think I don't think any shaman or shamanettes, as they would say sometimes,
Oh,
are
that's cute.
are clear, but they only have to be like a minute clear to get the message. They only have 5 minutes for it. Rest of the time, they're kind of screwed up for the most part because if their job is to deal with the spirit world all the time, boy, they better make sure that they have a good health plan. They gotta make sure that they're taking care of themselves. They're not going crazy. There's all kinds of things because it can become a very ungrounding experience, and that's why you see a lot, just like you know, a rip with a lot of those musicians who died young.
Hmm.
A lot of shaman that die young. Very few make it, and I know I don't want to be, I'm surprised I'm living this long, but it's a thing that sound, that music, to bring in that invocation, and having knowing at least what's your goal and what you're bringing in, and if you're not sure, if you have doubt, bring in someone who can help you, prepare with you, protect you, or remove the doubt. I mean, that's really, if you want to get the most return
Right.
that time. If not, I guess people bring in stuff all the time, and look at the world we're in now.
Okay, well, let me pivot for just a tiny little minute here and ask you, how does a shaman view death?
How does a shaman
Like
do that?
the
So,
physical
wow.
death of the human
Yeah,
body.
you're asking the great question. So this goes back to the whole, to really tie it into the timekeeping and astrology.
Yes.
One unifying thing that does happen, regardless of how you look at the so-called data, like for example, our system, we can bring it to the 15-minute increment, all the way out to a 26,000 year increment. I mean, that's what we do. That's what's very unique about it. Most people don't care about that, but it does help if you're looking at something that is very out of the ordinary. Earlier today, I went to a client's house to see if it's haunted, and not because they're afraid of something, because too many weird things are happening. So I think, like, due diligence. Okay, let's bring in Gonzo. Let's make sure we're missing something here, that this house needs to be cleansed or blessed or whatever it is. And so those are the things you would use to find out if something's happening. So when you're looking at the time, and when you're doing this kind of thing, and what brings in all of these directions together, it is the time that unifies everyone on the planet. I learned this not too long ago, maybe 10 years ago. Even certain tribes in Africa, whether they be in Ghana, Kenya, um, Uganda, which ones else? Botswana. These are the ones I know personally
Hmm.
of, that they have the same day. So in our calendar, today is considered a south day. And at sunset, it starts changing into the new day. And the new day tomorrow will be east. And the day after tomorrow will be north, and then west. So it goes counterclockwise if you're looking at a clock. So today is south, so that would be where the 6 would be on a standard clock. Tomorrow would be where the 3 is. The day after tomorrow is where the 12 is. And then
Okay.
tomorrow is 9 is the west. So that is the unifying theme, I think. And so when someone passes away, when our spirit leaves the body for the last time in this hemisphere, North, Central, and South America, they always go to the west first, and then they go to wherever they're going. I found that unique. What I found it
That's
really,
really cool because the sun always sets in the west. Yeah.
well, that's true, but I'm going to continue of how it differs in different parts of the world. So, in this line of work, you run into other people who do this kind of thing, usually by accident. Well, maybe it's not accident, but it's definitely, I think the spirits really intervene, saying, how the heck did they have these 3 people sitting at the same table, nothing in common except, wow, they just happen to be, the distribution center of witchy woo or shamanic stuff or whatever in their part of the world. So what I learned from several different families of Kahuna, they're the Hawaiian healers, indigenous there in the Hawaiian Islands. They have the same thing. There's a thing called the Nepali, or the Nepali coast. And the Nepali coast on each of the Hawaiian Islands are on the west end of that island. Because they say that is where the spirits jump off into the ocean once they leave the body for the last time. And so even there, it's the west. And so then I spent part of my growing up in Okinawa, Japan. My dad was in the Marine Corps, and there's a whole story behind that. But long and short of it is, I ended up coincidentally studying with my first Yuda, which is a type of witch doctor healer, folk healer in Okinawa, and they have their own system. I think, what do they call it? The kami system, the Shinto system of spirits in Japan, and the kami are the spirits themselves. And so, when they're venerating or they're sending stuff away, or where the spirits leave for the last time, in China, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, even in the country of India, which has nothing to do with China, they're two very different cultures, worlds, all the religions, everything. Everybody venerates to the south. And so I thought, that was the first time I learned. I said, oh, and I'm a young kid, but I knew enough. Went, oh yeah, when you die, you go to the west. Then go, no, no, no. If you pass away here in the Ryukyu Islands, you go to the south. And so then later on, when I got to know the Filipino cultures a little bit more, especially the healers there, they venerate to the north. The Aboriginal cultures venerate to the north. And so I started going, oh wow, it's not just a west thing. Like, I'm thinking, how come you're not doing it to the west? And when our people from 50,000 years ago in the Aboriginal caves or whatever said, the sky people said, you send everything to the north, and yeah. So it's not just what's going on, but where it is, especially in the spirit world, because we don't know. And I would think, the theory would be, okay, if that's true, then how the hell did everybody come together at one point? And I think maybe there were people when our land masses were closer together and everybody was sending the spirits in the same direction. And as they broke up, this is the thing that was left over. All the other memory was lost, but this was the thing that was left over. Why? Because everybody has to leave their body at some point.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's my a little pet peeve theory that way. And here's one to really throw it off.
What about the genetics of it, though? Like, there's genetics that seem to percolate through all of these old shamanic, I guess you could call them tribes, for lack of a better word, from my perspective, that are really old. Like, there's, like really, really old genetics from Australia and from Asia and from South America that seem to all correlate with the same age of origin. And it's not 30,000. It's a lot longer.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's way older. And
right.
I mean, does any of your shamanistic teachings or history ever report of a time before the moon?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. Yeah, it absolutely does.
I know it seems like a random question, but
No,
there's
it's
so
part
much
of-
I want to pack into this show.
and of course we can always have me back as well.
Yeah. Oh, would you? Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So the short answer is, yeah. In our calendar system, we call it the first world, and the first world had no moon. Yeah, it had a bunch of other things, which they're still trying to figure out some of that stuff. But as far as they can tell, it had no moon because there's no reference to it. It's only in the second world there is veneration. In the third world, there was a moon. That's for sure. And so most people say, "Oh, wait a minute," and this is where again I think the internet is a great thing, and at the same time, oh no, everybody has an opinion.
Well, if it wasn't for the internet, we would have never met.
That's true, and that's why I don't poo-poo at all. I used to, and then I said, if it wasn't for this, a lot of things wouldn't have been happening, and a lot of people would not be aware of a lot of situations going on. It would still be what you saw on ABC, CB,
Yeah.
ABC. That's it. Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So long and short of it is that in the first world there was no assignment or no reference to the moon. There were no moon ceremony. It was very, most people said, oh, it's just, lost over time. It's good argument that way. And when you're looking at it going, what the hell does that mean? And I think one of the misconceptions happens is that when people read and say, oh, but the difference between calendars is that, what's a really famous one? And this is a very small group of people that even look at this. Oh yeah, the Hopis say that we're in the fourth world. The Mayans say we're in the fourth world, et cetera, et cetera. How come you say you're in the fifth world or ended? The fifth world ended, and I said, you're looking at the wrong calendar. The one that's in the fourth world right now, so to speak, is a small circle cycle that goes, I think, every 5,600 years, 7,000 years, something. I can't remember the number offhand. The one I'm looking at is a long count. It's the 26,000 year, or the odometer is what I like to say.
Hmm.
It's not unlike the, what do they call, the yugas? I think is what they're called in
Yeah, the yugas.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's not a mystery that they have those kinds of really long increments for a real reason, So
Well, that brings up that same question that I asked before is like, how do you know about a time increment that lasts that long without having an effective way of transmitting that from generation to generation, unless maybe people lived longer back then, or there's a better way. Like, here's my theory, and I'm starting to ask a lot of people
uh,
this, is I think music might be the oldest form of encryption and data storage that we have, and it's also the most effective because it when you're talking about astrological timings, that I mean, music depends on timing. That's what
right,
music is. It's specific timing, at, or else it's not music, really.
right.
So I guess what I'm asking is, how old is this? I almost want to call it a technology of passing down information. It almost seems like it's like you got a computer hard drive. If a CME goes off, boom, it's gone. It's wiped. Like, but
Right,
you're still gonna remember the way that song sounds,
right.
and it's still gonna be. You're gonna remember where, like, because encoded in the song is the timing of when you're supposed to sing it and how and for what purpose. Um, I'm wondering if maybe music might be the oldest form of data storage or passing on information. Or I mean, maybe prayer could get there, and ceremony as well. But ceremony and prayer, you know, you need music to make a ceremony, and you need prayer to make a ceremony, right? So, what? How old is this really? How, like, it seems like if we're measuring yugas in like hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of years, how old is this?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question. I always think of it like this, as a very simple answer. The source of this, or the origin, as we like to say, because we are of origin, you and I, we are incarnate bodies.
Mhm.
This time of origin, it comes down to the pulse, like the heartbeat. And that's where that resonance begins, because that's a level of hertz and electrical conductivity, or whatever you want to call it, and matching with the planet itself, because everybody has to run at a certain frequency, a certain hertz number. But I think I think you're right. It may be the oldest form, to tie it in with the whole idea of the genetics thing. I am the first generation of Indian people. I'm in my mid 50s, and we're the first generation to actually write this down, put it on paper, digital, whatever. Everything, even for me, I learned it oral history. Everybody did
Right.
forever, because you had to learn this, because we knew this was coming to an end at some point. It's my opinion, and this is just my own opinion about this, that even as short as 1,000, I have to move it back more, probably about 3,000 years ago now, that people knew what the heck was going on. And certainly, I think 1,000 years ago, at least in this part of the world, they knew if I said, "Hey, Paul, get this amethyst. I want you to put it next to the acorn tree." And you knew exactly what that amethyst was. You knew what it meant, what it was for. You put it next to the acorn tree, you knew what it would do. And you could, put your ear on the ground and say, "Oh, 400 horses. Okay, here they come," or whatever it is. And I think at about 1,000 years ago, maybe further back, but I think at least at 1,000 years ago, we started losing that,
Mm.
and that connection to the nature, to the planet. And certainly by the time the genocide had the onslaught, a little less than 500 years later, that really sped things up, and really just, obliterated so much of that knowledge base and that transmission. So then it became essential for us to learn it. Oral history, keeping it online. Like, for example, the modern day version of thing like this is with I was reading this article, I forgot when, and then they made a reference to it, believe it or not, on the X Files a long time ago with Mulder and Scully kind of thing, and it was about the Navajo code talkers and how
Yes.
you had the Navajo code talkers
In World War II.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And so there was all oral history, and that's how you did it because what did they do? The Nazis are going to come in or whoever, and they're going to take it away with what paper? It's transmitted, and that's how it's remembered. And you passed it to your family, your neighbors, whoever it is, because you had to contain and remember that. And some people they would forget. So then we have a particular method. We call it the toe, bone, or the tooth. You can memorize and store your memory in a tooth, your own bone in your body, or your toe, and you'll say, "Oh man, I can't remember where I put my keys." And you put your hand in your wrist. Oh, that's right, they're over there. I mean, I'm giving you
Right.
a simple example, but it's really more for the record keeping and what people say. Oh, those are just the stories. I said, no, that's the outline. Those are the rules, guidelines, and procedures of how to keep our soul here. And we have people's souls being ripped away all the time, or people wanting to electively leave because their life is so bad that everybody is trying to kill them and make them suffer. That why would they want to stay? That their soul starts leaving first, and by the time they're just a shell, they unfortunately, decide to cross the veil after all. But I think at the end of the day, it really came down to that pulse in the body that had that resonance for that transference of memory as you continue to go generation as generation, whether it be for celebration and honoring, or whether it be for generational trauma, as unfortunately has been studied more and more. But it's a thing too. It isn't all just roses and rainbows and medicine wheel drums and that kind of thing. So
Right. So
carries all of that, and that's how I think that genetics component, along with that memory transmission, did occur. And yeah, I think you're right about the music thing, but I think it started with the pulse, with the human pulse itself, the actual beat that way.
yeah, the rhythm of nature is
Right.
definitely the ultimate metronome for most things, including music. So I want to, I kind of want to focus on for a bit, what the difference, but like, why would somebody go to a doctor as opposed to a shaman, or vice versa? Like, because it seems like, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, if you don't trust the medical system, go to a shaman. Because I don't think that's giving people the accurate information on what it is that a shaman does compared to a doctor. But a lot of people who maybe have perhaps never heard of shamanistic medicine and healing may not know why you would want to go. Like, I mean, like some people might even think that's like, going to an exorcist. There's really not a lot of, mainstream sources of information regarding these ancient practices that don't just dealing with the symptoms. They dive deep, not only into the physiological symptoms, but perhaps how they're tied to the mental and spiritual symptoms or effects that are, all playing a part in one ailment. And a doctor may not prescribe, if you have a sore, a sore or anything, they'll give you painkillers. Whereas a shaman will be like, well, what's causing that pain? Not on a physiological level, but on a spiritual level. So can you maybe separate those two avenues for our listeners today? I've always wanted to ask a shaman that.
Absolutely. So I think to put it in historical context, like I said earlier, up until the mid 1960s, at least in the United States, people of color did not have access to the so-called regular mainstream medical system. That wasn't that long ago.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So with your question, that may be true for, I hate to say it, white folks, but
Yep.
anyone who's non-white, It's like, oh yeah, of course you can. They always say, oh, I don't do that anymore. That's superstitious, but it saved my uncle, or my aunt came back and they got rid of the dengue fever, whatever it was. I mean, there's always everybody has always at least one personal, verifiable story in their family. Even people say, well, I didn't know my parents were it. Do you? And then that's when they talk to a shaman. "Oh, who are you and where are actually my grandma would always say Echun Awoto, which is do not ask what is the problem first, or why is the problem, or who's the blame. The first question you ask is where is it? Is it inside you? Is it attached to your body, like clothes or something like that,
Hmm.
or is it away or off your body? And is it about the past, present, or future? That is always, and I'm trying to promote that as a standard of shamanic medical care when a person is talking to whoever it is, whether it be a tarot reader or whether it be a Reiki person or whether it be Qigong or, a shaman, whatever. So that is the standard that you always look at. I remember doing some lectures at the local medical school here in Portland, Oregon, and I remember the head of neurology had said this is 25 years ago. My God, that's a long time ago. And they said, wow, Gonzo, this is great how you put these things together about where the mind and body are together. And I answered flippantly back, but wasn't thinking at the time, of course. I said, they've never been apart. What are you talking about? The mind and body together. We're not living in a hot tub, So you're gonna have the mind and body always together, and that's, it's not a way of looking at it from a like a meme saying, oh, first time you're here today. It's more along the lines of how do you help people who are discovering this for their first time that way, because the shinola has hit the fan, so to speak. Their
Yeah,
life is
it
in
can be
true
shocking
chaos.
for some people
Yeah,
that aren't ready
very
for it.
shocking.
Yeah.
And I honestly think it's good clinical care, in my opinion, because if the medical doctor was not beholden to an insurance company or a big pharma, I think they would spend 4 hours talking to the person, doing the H&P called history and
Hmm.
physical. They would do all of these things. However, we don't live in a system like that. And remember, us people, as indigenous people, as people who were the descendants of slaves, they all had to do this because the medical system didn't allow it. So you had someone come in and you're hearing them not only about them, their life, their problems. Man, I've got this backache still, or whatever it is. And something along the line, they're already giving you the information to figure it out. In my family, we have particular guidelines we go by. My grandma said, I created these rules. I did not create them, but I wrote them down in a very specific way. And it, not necessarily in the same order, but there are four rules, as I tell people. Versus, like, you have four directions, right? North, south, east, west. Or
Yep.
I tell my chiropractors there's only one spine. There's only four directions. At least when you're doing shamanic medicine, I think there are at least four primary rules. And the first one is you rule out the supernatural every time. He goes, oh, I got allergies. Oh, I got this headache. Oh, I got this. He goes, okay, is it something attached to him? Is it a ghost? Is it those are things I think then anyone who is adept to this type of stuff can rule that out pretty quickly.
Hmm.
There are very specific tools and protocol that don't take a lot of time, and you can do it within an hour. Like, okay, yeah, we have a real issue here or not. And this is, of course, after you're listening to the person's story and what's going on and how long it's been happening with them, et cetera, et cetera. The
Right.
second rule is know that you're not alone. And my uncles used to always joke, yeah, because the FBI is always listening. And so instead, it really is that you're not alone because you have the spirit world all the way around you. And when folks say, well, I just don't, that's good for them, but, and I want to respect your indigenous culture, but I just don't, I'm just not into that. I said, okay, you're Catholic, right? Yes. It goes, what's your family saint? What's that? What's the medal? Oh, well, that's Saint Christopher or Saint John. What I said, so why don't you make fun of that? Why don't you say you're not into this? I mean, what gives you that? Well, I don't want to be disrespectful. I went, oh, okay. Well, why do you still carry it with you? And then, I get to find out
And
that
that's when you give them the
something,
peyote, right?
right. Yeah. No, no, I do not do that. So, I
I'm
do
just
not,
kidding.
yeah. No, no, yeah. So, that's where you figure out, okay, this is where, it's not that they're in denial. I think most of the time that they're lost. and they're
Yeah.
not looking. They're looking for a community. They're looking for a group. They're looking for a way back to their own home. Because I think a home can be a spiritual home, but people have been. I was having a good discussion with this yesterday with a dear friend of mine, and um, she noted about we are living in a time still that people use words based on separation, distancing,
Mm-hmm.
and rather than coming together. And it isn't like, oh, we're all together as one or whatever. It's the actual verbiage that way. So there are power in words, power in song, power in those tones that way. So that's the way you
Well,
would look. So then, as you're a
I,
shaman doing the intake, you would say, why would a person go there first? Usually they don't go there first because the MD says they're nuts or there's nothing wrong with them or they're depressed or, oh, I've got all these problems. There are all these physical problems. They go, uh-huh, your blood work looks just fine. Meet our Lord and Savior, Cymbalta or gabapentin or whatever it is and whatever med they'll be pushing on at the time. And I think those things help people sometimes at certain things, but
okay, but
um,
wait, I have to stop you and ask a question here because what about tribes then? Like tribes are a clear separation of groups of people,
so it
right?
depends on the area of the country you're looking at, and depends on the tribe, and it depends on the individual of what they're seeking out. Nobody would, if they have a broken arm or they're bleeding, nobody's going to go to their shaman. They probably would go to their shaman saying, "Hey, man, can I get a ride to the hospital?" That kind of thing. Or if they have to go to the hospital, they have to pay $900 out of pocket. So they're going to go to their Indian Health Service outpatient clinic. Or do you see what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah,
what's
but
the
my
need?
question was like the segregation of people even happened thousands of years ago when they had tribes.
Yeah.
And so
So
there must be some kind of an advantage to having a tribe that's different from everybody else, or at least have a difference from everybody else.
like I'm trying to understand what would be
You know
the
how like there's different Native American tribes, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so like why are there different tribes? Why aren't you all just one tribe? You know what I mean? Like
Usually it depends on, well, I think part of it is history because let's say, for example, a lot of the tribes in the US, in the northern plain, like the Midwest, so to speak, they're originally from New York. They're originally from somewhere else, and the tribes that are in Oklahoma, they're all from North Carolina. And that happened because of Andrew Jackson and the Indian Wars and
mhm.
everything. So they pushed them
I,
out.
I'm more speaking to the concept of a tribe itself. Like belonging to a group of people that's different, that's unique from everybody else, that has something special about them, that
Right,
is you that contributes to the greater good of all the other tribes, that they all
right.
contribute different things. I'm wondering if that, like, not to obliterate the idea of tribalism completely, like almost like we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater in a little bit. You know what I'm saying? With the whole
Um,
with because I think that there's a safe level of tribalism that's healthy. I think.
Yes, and I'm trying. What do you? Maybe I'm being dense today. I need more coffee. But what um what's your question with
The question uh, is do you think that shamanism has that level of tribalism? Like, is there ways that certain tribes would treat certain things that would be different from other tribes to treat the same thing?
Yes, short answer is yes, and it's usually based on the customs and traditions of that particular tribe, and it's usually based on the solution they would be using. Like you would not be using a type of ritual that's involved what we call how do I translate the snake medicine. If you're trying to help someone from, I'll just do it this way. So snake medicine for us in Lipan Apache is venerated. I think it's a great thing. Best thing since round tortillas. That's our thing. Cousins, the Jicarilla Apache, who live in Dulce, New Mexico. Um, and that's our common. We have a very common language. A lot of things. We're closely linguistically related to them. That's why we're part of the Eastern Apache, so to speak,
Okay.
group. They think the snakes are evil. There's a long-standing big no-no. It's a no bueno if anybody's using snake stuff or anything resembling a snake, et cetera, et cetera. So, and it's not that far away. When you're looking at the different so-called territories. So, a shaman would know the difference. They would know where that person's from and what to use and not to use.
Right.
And there's some unique things, like I said, for our tribe. A lot of people, a lot of tribes come and ask me about their calendar, when to start the Sundance, when to start different types of ceremonies they usually do at a particular time of year. And they say, yeah, what day is it better? Should we start on the Thursday or the Saturday? I said, this is what's lined up at the time. This is what, we call it. We call it the Tonopali. That's our slang for it. And it's the Tonahuapali, which is Nahuatl or Aztec for the calendar. But that's what my grandma called it, so I'm calling it that. But most of the time, each tribe, as the shamanic thing goes, they have a real specialty that no one does better. Partly because they've done it a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and but these days everything is so fragmented, and so, and then part of it I think started with the genocide, but it's eclectic, I guess you can say.
How did you manage to cut through all that fragmentation and get to where you are now with your with what you know? Is it mostly because of your tribe or your family and knowledge passed down, or did you go to a school? Like, was there were you chosen for something? You know what I mean?
I have a unique upbringing. I was born into a lineage, a family medicine clan that were the peyote keepers. That was
Okay.
like already, and everybody. I've got a billion cousins. It's like, that's related to me. I mean, blood related, and so. A lot of them aren't into it. Some are, some like to partake and not do anything else.
So
But
you've done peyote?
what's that?
Have you done peyote?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So there's that part of it that I'm born into, and so when they were seeing that I had, I wouldn't say gifts, as I was just acting a little different, they said, "Oh great, hey, we might have another one in the making." Instead of saying, "You're crazy, oh no, something's wrong with my kid," it's like, "All right,
Hmm.
start having him train with so and so first and see if it works out."
Right.
Like I said, my parents, my father was in the military in the Marines. We went to Okinawa, and there I got introduced to everything about herbs, acupuncture.
Wow. See, no, if you were a white kid, you would have got put in special education.
Yeah, 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 for sure. So, and then, later on, I came back, finished. I came back as a young teenager, came back and finished my training, and I thought I was just going to be a healer for my family and basically who I married, and that's it. That's usually what you do. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, you take care of your fam, maybe a couple of your cousins, and that's it. Versus, I never thought that I would be going pro, so to speak. And then on top of that is when I went to college, um, I got introduced. Really, that was where I got introduced to tribes outside of Mexico and the Southwest United States, because I didn't know anything about the Lakotas or whatever, aside from, yeah, we gave them peyote and that's it kind of thing, and they would come down once in a while. But Minnesota is a very heavy, hairy area of the Ojibwe from Canada would come
Yep.
down to, so we got to know a lot of those.
Anishinaabe.
Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
Yep.
So it's nice to have, already that in you, and then it's sort of like you kind of, like I said, was it by accident or was it by something else? And then later on, when after my medical training, I ended up having one of my. She ended up being a patient of mine, and when she passed away, of course, was very hard. But by chance, I happened to meet up with her. It was the late Candace Pert. She's a PhD neuroscientist. She discovered the opiate receptor.
Hmm.
She discovered
Wow.
endorphin, and she discovered and could develop the thing called peptide T for the AZT cocktails for AIDS. So I mean, this lady was off the charts. Nobody, even people who say, well, she was a liberal, but she discovered the opiate receptor, and we were still, they think, 100 years away from looking at pain that way. Still, she came across it, and she said, I was a young girl breastfeeding, 1972 at John Hopkins, and I had to do it at night because they didn't allow women in the lab to breastfeed, during our break. So it was, again, not that long ago. And so it was really under her tutelage, and later on, a number of my Qigong and Tuina and martial arts people that really formed me who I am today. So it's a little bit of each parts of this journey of how I ended up accidentally or maybe on purpose on a whole other level of synthesizing it together. So that's where you find me as the anomaly of traditional medicine man, but also a family trained curandero. Like I can do the limpias with the best of them, and all about haunted houses and whatnot. And that's what we do.
Awesome.
Someone is in shock, they've seen a car accident. Okay, go give themselves, in Spanish they call it a limpia. Limpia is a cleansing of some kind. The most famous kind is you do it with an egg. You take the egg, rub the person with it. Don't break the egg on the body because that's after hours limpia. So in all sense, you break it into a bowl. People still put it in a cup of water. I wish they would stop that nonsense, but you put it in a bowl, and that's basically you removed what was going on at the moment, or gives it a snapshot in time. Heaven forbid you have someone trained like me doing that kind of thing. That's a family trained curandero for, gosh, at least 400 years. So it's a unique way of looking at it, and I'm very lucky to, like I said, having enough of my colleagues in neuroscience at the University of Minnesota and of course at NIH in Washington D.C. really opened my eyes to the so-called Western medicine type of interfaces as well. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, when a person goes to a shaman, I think they should go see them first. Unless they're like bleeding out, yeah, they'll have this headache. A good shaman will say, yeah, you need to go see a doctor. They need to do an X-ray, MRI, something like that, because he will figure out right away what happened because they can spend time with them.
That's awesome that you just said that a shaman would say, go see a doctor.
Yeah, a trained one would,
Because
Yeah.
this is kind of what I'm getting at here. This is why I wanted to talk to a shaman specifically, is because I don't think you just do physiological work on not work. Let's call it healing. You know how to use certain plants for different reasons than what I've gathered. I mean, I'm a trained chef, and I read that there's, a multitude of uses for plants that I don't even cook with in a restaurant. And they're common. They're everywhere. One of them being dandelion.
Yeah.
That's just one of them. How much of shamanism is involved in plants and plant medicine? And how much of that do you know about? And do you make plant medicines or plant recommendations to people?
I think it's an intrinsic part to at least my family's medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak for, actually I can. I can speak for other shamanic schools that they don't do that because honestly, I think they don't have time. They focus on a particular thing and they do it better than a lot of people, and for me, yes, we've always used herbs, plants, not only that were native to the region there in South Texas, but wherever essentially I lived. I think I tell people the unique thing with our family system is that I've helped develop a method to look at whatever you're looking at. Like I said earlier, we're peyote people. So we wrote the book on plant spirit medicine. Literally, anybody who reads, there's a famous book called Plant Spirit Medicine, and in the second paragraph, the guy says, I studied with the curandera. Of course you did, because who the hell else would tell you that? And then I went to hang out with the Huichols for a while. So it's really that kind of thing where I already have the nice introduction and affinity, but I still had to learn it. I still had to learn all these Western herbs. And then when I went to acupuncture school, learned a bajillion Chinese herbs that I already knew some living in Japan, but they just took it to a whole other pharmacology level, I guess. And so when you're looking at the plant remedies, you use it for use. Is it for a ritual? Is it for a stomach ache? Is it for a problem that the person needs to solve and they don't know sometimes they don't even know the problem. They just know they feel bad.
Right.
And so, you're going to give them something like dandelion's a great one. Dandelion, people say, oh, dandelion tea, it's great for liver detoxing, a bunch of other things. I use it typically for pain, especially when you have mastitis that's after breastfeeding, or you have chest pain, like physiological, and they've already ruled out heart attacks you've got this thing called costochondritis, which basically means pain between your ribs in the fascia or the soft
Hmm.
tissue. You don't want to take meds, or for whatever reason they don't work for you because they make you feel weird. Not a bad way to start. And that's based on traditional Chinese medicine of what, 3,000 years of using dandelion as the plant that goes down the stomach meridian, which basically runs midway between the part of your throat and the shoulder on each side of your chest. So it
It,
goes right
so,
to the chest. So that's an example of,
yeah, and you mentioned Chinese medicine too, and it's like one of the oldest forms of medicine known to mankind, at least unless you talk to a shaman from Australia or
yeah.
Native America, or it goes older than that.
Uh,
And so, where did we get this information from? I think I have a theory. My theory is that it's actually somewhat encoded in our DNA, but it's also kind of like sacred geometry. It's there for anyone to see if you just have the knowledge of what to look for. And so, I guess what I'm asking is, if it's that old, then who taught those people? You, like, do you understand what I meant?
I do. I do. Absolutely.
Like,
Well,
I
I think
don't
the,
feel like people, like, at least as human beings, could figure this stuff out without some kind of guidance. And
oh, yeah.
so shamanism comes from a source, a guidance, if you will. And what do you think that is, and where does it come from?
Well, to answer the first part of your question about the DNA, and somebody had to know this because it's all in all of us. As I always like to point out, even Nancy Reagan was the first lady for a president named Ronald Reagan. Probably too young for you to know. So Ronald
No,
Reagan
I
was
remember her.
okay. So Nancy Reagan had this famous saying, just say no. But I always remind people that even Nancy Reagan had the CBD, THC, endocannabinoid receptor in her body. Every human does. It's not like, you don't. So even she had that cannabis receptor that's naturally built in to our human bodies itself. So we know where these things are deeper inside our bodies. Part of it is we're just not on times in tune in that way, but the transmission of that knowledge, a lot of my elders, they say that it came from a different realm, whether that people translate that as a different universe or a different dimension. Other folks, they say it came from the sky. I think it certainly came from somewhere else because we just aren't that smart as a primate. We kind of kill each other all the time and blow stuff up and cause all kinds of things. And when the planet gets mad, here comes the next extinction level event.
Right.
In our calendar we look at ELEs. That's how we divide up our worlds. So the long and short of it is that transmission and teaching, I think, is intrinsic, and it's maybe for some shaman, I know they can have the ability to have a little bridge so a person can access that information while they're the bridge. I think what happens with people, they think, oh, they're going to channel in some information, they're going to come in from the spirit world. Technically, so you don't hurt the messenger, you have a person who's the actual conduit,
Mm-hmm.
and you have someone else who's actually receiving the message. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah, yeah.
very hard on the neuro. It's very difficult, especially if you're getting what I consider primary source material, where
Right.
our human bodies aren't used to that. And I think that's why they had, oh well, better give them some plants so they can help them out.
That's what I'm saying. I was just gonna say, like,
Yeah, yeah.
some of the psychedelic plants that you guys use in your medicine might aid in getting that sort of information extracted, because
I think so.
that's how they
Absolutely.
work, right?
Yeah, because you don't have to do peyote once a week or every day to know what dandelion root does, because it's written down, it's on the internet.
Right.
It's like schools of thought that have fleshed this out. Even my family, we would meet up before COVID, before 2019, we'd meet up every 2 or 3 years, and we would basically trade notes on, okay, did this soul retrieval work better than this one? Did this work better? This limpia? Did this exorcism work better than this one? What worked? What didn't work? And that was a continuity. I mean, it doesn't unfortunately happen anymore. I think honestly, I think the COVID thing really kind of broke that. And so, and all the infrastructure behind it. So and then people started getting crazy, man. They started getting more distraught and more isolated, and that's where I think it's nice to have these gatherings of shamans, but yeah, most of the time they're people, they need them because they're in a dark place. I
Yeah.
taught qigong like 30 years ago, and I always tell it was a medical qigong program I would be teaching to people and saying, I'm of the advantage where you need to build more chi in your body. Need to have more light in your body that you can handle, because your friends are going to be in what the Spanish call the sombra, the shadow. They're going to be in the darkness, and you need to pull them out of that darkness and back into the light, so to speak. So you need more juice than your body technically can handle for a short amount of time, so you can discharge that to get your person, your friend, whoever it is, back onto a more a peaceful way of looking at things. And so, yeah, it's a thing, that's for sure. So yeah, I think the
So
transition, it had to be coming from somewhere else, or like we said, this that where humankind has been longer than we can even understand.
yeah, that's what I'm leaning towards, that kind of an
It's
idea.
the thing, man. Yeah, yeah.
I think maybe the knowledge passed down through shamanistic traditions is sort of maybe even hiding or perhaps preserving some of that information for people who are, in the right environment or from the right background with the right genetics, the right surroundings, environment, what have you, so that they can remember it or be taught it in an open setting and be able to pass it down to people. Like, here's another thing about shamanism that I've noticed is that you can't just teach that to anyone. It has to be a certain kind of person that's willing to, accept these teachings. What do you think's going on in that aspect of like, because you were born into it, kind of like you mentioned your history, you were kind of born into it, so you kind of in a in a humorous way of looking at it, you kind of lucked out.
I totally lucked out. Yeah,
Yeah.
I came onto the planet again.
But do you think that people can just kind of learn this kind of stuff, or do you have to have a certain propensity in it, in some regard, or some attribute that you need, or can anybody learn this kind of thing and use it effectively to heal people?
I think that anyone can learn most things if they have the right circumstance and right training, and that does include shamanic practices. Now, they don't have to be the dude or dudette sitting on a hill, or they have to be the end all be all of things. I think that's where the whole idea of colonialism kind of almost projects, like, oh, if you're a shaman, then you got to do all these things. There's a, yeah, bullshit, man. You've got all kinds of people with certain shamanic levels. You got the person who they're really good at plants. They're really good at cooking. I have some good ones there, but they have had enough of that shamanic training to know, okay, this is how I can cross into the veil, be there in the spirit world, come back for a little bit, and really make this pop, make this happen. I know folks who do that with minerals, with stones, crystals, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. If you do, because the stone medicine, because as my grandma would say, "Elanto eu mapatus," which means the stone people have been here longer than the human people, and so they are senior to us, and we do not know how to treat them correctly. And so when we ask for favors, or sometimes reimbursement, we don't know how to ask for them properly, or we need to do some other things
Hmm.
for that. And so when a person says, I think there's a particular type of person that that would do specific types of shamanic activities. Let's say exorcisms. It's a very dangerous thing to do. I think you have to know your shit. You have to really be grounded. You have to have a lot of protection armor with you.
Yeah,
You
it's
always,
not a virtue toy.
yeah, 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 for sure. And so that is something like, yeah, not everybody's going to do that. And nobody ever wants to do that either. I mean, honestly, most people don't. That's not their thing. I don't blame them. It's not fun. But other folks, I think they can all learn in the very primary sense, earth-based,
Mm-hmm.
indigenous spirit tools, shamanic tools that will help them and help other people, even if it's just their own family. And because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that you can help out your loved ones and your friends first, Especially, let's say you have a friend who's a really good plumber or really good electrician.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, you're going to ask them first, because you're going to hire someone at $300 an hour for what? Versus, hey, Bob, can you come over here and do I need to call an electrician for this or need to call a plumber? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the level of shamanic thing. So you have three levels of it. You do have that the one type of specialty, so to speak, and they're in so-called tribes or families or groups of people how they learn, but every person in spirit training, shamanic training does it the same way. They're born into a lineage. That's one way to do it,
Hmm.
and they still have to want to do it. I mean, I have 30 cousins that are born into this, and I'm like, there's
And
only three of us that are really into it.
right, right. You
So,
have to have the inclination as
oh,
well,
yeah,
right?
for sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then the second one is that they learn from someone somewhere, whether it be in person, online, whatever it is. They're getting it from books, everything like that. Because as especially in this field, you never stop learning. In this case, I'm learning how to use electronic and the digital stuff because that's a great tool for me to use to get the stuff across to people. And
Exactly.
so then the third way is what they call a spontaneous one. And I always like to correct this in my classes that I teach. I said, most people think the spontaneous shamanism says, wow, wow, I'm a healer now. I'm a energy, whatever, whatever. And I guess you could say, yes, that's true if it means that it's not only making you feel better, but you're doing something good. You're doing something to help someone out.
Yeah.
You're doing something that actually is going to help your pet, not just to make you feel good, but you're doing it for more than you. That's like, your first step in getting past your so-called ego. I said, but in the true indigenous traditional shamanic sense, a person who gets that spontaneous learning, they know like 80% of the rituals already,
Right.
spontaneous, and they're tested by the elders or someone like myself. Went, well, damn, they got 90, 80, 90%. All right, cool,
Hmm.
spontaneous, and they have a special little spot because when there is something that's on fire, hey, bring in the guy. He can't get burned, because he's a spontaneous. He's got a little spontaneous in him. So
Yeah.
so those are very particular things that you look at. I think overall, anyone can be a shaman in their own way, and I'm not trying to be egalitarian, saying to make them feel good.
No, I get it. Yeah.
Shamanism is not for the faint of heart, and most of the time, I think people just want to make sure that okay, I got to get rid of this bad juju because my in-laws are coming over. Thanksgiving has come up, and I don't want another fecal storm occurring because people talk about politics or whatever it is.
Right.
People want to do that kind of thing. Or my kid's really sick. All the doctors say that we're crazy or there's nothing wrong, but they're still losing weight and they still say they don't have cancer or whatever. What do we do now?
Hmm.
They have folks that help out and guide them to do that. You have folks who do births. I attended 200 births before my own kid's birth and delivered them. So it's not like everybody's got a little different vocation or specialty. And honestly, I think downfall. I shouldn't say that. The downside to my family system is that we have too many things. And you can't be good at everything. I certainly am not, but you want to be familiar with enough tools. So something that you may not be into so much, someone else think it's the best thing since round tortillas. It's the
Yeah.
best since refried beans. Like wow,
Have you
I'm
ever
a,
had square tortillas, by the way? I highly recommend
yeah,
them.
yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're good. It's like flatbread. Um,
yeah, it's like that non stuff. So
Speaking of food, I have a random question from the greenhouse, which is the chat room over here at groundzeroplus.com. If you're a member, you're in the chat room.
I am a
Somebody
member of Ground Zero. Yes.
somebody wanted me to ask you about fasting. What's
Yeah.
what's a shamanistic view on fasting? When do you do it and when do you not do it?
So fasting comes in two ways. The first thing is that what is the purpose for the fasting in the first place? Some people say, "Well, I just want to feel good," or "I'm preparing myself for an
Makes sense.
Ironman." Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the first thing you ask, and then once you figure out what it's for, maybe people say, "Well, I think I just need to go on a fast." He goes,
Yeah,
"Well,
and a lot of people want to detox.
right, right, right." So then you got to really look at what are you detoxing from, and it's honestly for them, it's only their job later to understand that. It's the shaman's job. This is my opinion.
Hmm.
It is on the shaman to figure that out. At least eliminate some other things first, So they say, yeah, you probably want to head in this direction first versus spend a lot of time somewhere else. So the short answer for fasting, and albeit, you have to look at, if you're on medications, whatever it is going
Right.
on.
This isn't medical advice, folks. We're just
Yeah,
spitballing
I,
here. A
I
question
think a
came
good
up in
way.
the chat, and we're gonna
So a
answer
good
it.
way to think about fasting is who do you do it for and what is your purpose? Shamanistically speaking, you do go on fast if you're going to be doing like a heavy peyote ceremony. I mean, some of those fasts go 9 days
Yeah,
before peyote ceremony, so it's a thing because you
but
want
that's
to.
for safety reasons, I heard.
Um, it depends on what. Yeah, the 9 days one is those are for the older ceremonies that are
So,
done every 400 years or something like that. The ones for
wow.
fasting for let's see, my family, I did one. Man, I did one. I forgot in the 90s, maybe no, maybe it was early 2000s. One that was done every 375 years. I guess it would have been 395 years at this point. My parents were really pissed about it too. Because what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? And you can't be doing this kind of thing because I'm being skewered with spikes and all this. I mean, it was terrible. But I did that because I had to start removing these curses from my own family lineage, and it turned out it helped a bunch of other tribes that I did not even know about at that time. And I
Wow.
started these random. This is like 1999, 2000. This is before Instagram, man. This is before anything like that. And
Right.
I would random phone calls from South Dakota and Minnesota, a couple from Canada, and what? Hey, is your name Gonzo? What? Okay, is it a bill collector? I'm like, oh wow. No, it turns out that hey, I want to thank you, blah blah blah. You came to us, and I said I haven't been there. I said you did this and this on this day. I went, oh yeah. I said you removed this part of something we haven't been able to figure out for years. Hopefully, our people now will make a step forward. And so,
Wow.
oh, you have those kinds of things that you do a fasting for. I think for people to get right with themselves and reconnect their own core self and get part of their soul back. Usually, when a person says, "Yeah, I want to detox," from a shamanic standpoint, that means part of their soul is missing. So they should take it that seriously. Going, all right, part of my soul is missing.
Hmm.
How do I do it? Like what I always used to say, the 3-2-1. On the 3 days or the 4 days you're doing it, your first day, you get rid of all your anti-inflammatory foods. Gluten, basically bread. Things that you may or may not be allergic to, milk, anything like that. And then you get rid of any kind of protein the next day, and then by that third day you're probably doing something like vegetable broth or something like that, and maybe some water. And then that fourth day is when you're doing that fasting, and it isn't unique in the sense of my tribe does it this way. Like I said, I'm very familiar with East Asian medicine, especially Qigong, and there's
Yeah.
enough Qigong systems out there that do 4 or 5 day fasts, and they have their own methods to do that. So they clear out their meridians a little more, so they can gain more prenatal chi or chi before they were born, kind of thing. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of purposes to it. So the fast, I think, in general, if you think about it, this is going to help my soul because part of my soul is missing. That's a great way to prioritize it. Like,
Hmm.
what am I going to do this for? If you say, oh man, I've just been drinking too much, and goes, well, stop drinking, stop drinking alcohol. That probably will help. And
Right.
that's something for a person. But I think at the end of the day, when you're doing the fast thing, always have a shaman with you, give you some pointers. People can always contact me. I can give them the pointers too. But the fasting part about purification, that in of itself is who you do it for and what's your purpose. As shamanic training goes, absolutely, it's part of the shamanic training because you do go into those so-called liminal states of death or going across the other side and near-death experiences and whatever. That's a unique thing to.
Well, there's also the aspect of like when you take psychedelics for a spiritual experience that it's better to take them on an empty stomach because
Right, and
it
you want to make sure your system is clear with other things that
exactly.
might be blocking the absorption of it, and it's like it's sort of like with peyote. That's a good example where
It's almost like
when I
fasting is a
know
preparation for
for
a
sure.
larger work.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 Most of the time when you take I think most of these types of plant medicines, whether it be the different kinds of peyote or whether it be ayahuasca is another famous one right
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And that's the feminine part of the plant medicine. The masculine part of the plant is called wachuma. So a person says, "Oh, I do ayahuasca." I say, "Okay, when are you going to do your wachuma ceremony?" What's that?
It,
Well,
right, and they
it's
have no idea.
yeah, yeah. So it gives you an idea, and you don't. It's not to insult them or punk them. It's just sort of like this is what they're operating from. Okay, be the good educator, be the good person to say, hey, you might want to start doing these things, or ask them what they're looking for. Or we're in Portlandia, so for a long time people were, and they still are, into psilocybin type of mushroom.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We talk
So
about that a
like,
lot on this show.
and you've got and you know, as if you've done this kind of thing before, man, there's like at least 9 species of mushroom that I'm familiar with that have that core psilocybin thing.
Oh, there's
And
more than that now.
yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, the ones I'm familiar with is like there's 9 types that you know exactly what it is. I mean, there's truffles. You know, I tell people, man, there's truffles. Really? Oh yeah, wow. I had no idea. I said, you got to know the plant a little bit more, and some people don't. But I think the downside to it is people, and I think for good reason that they're doing the psilocybin experience, especially when they're microdosing it, making taking it what 0.05 grams of it,
Yeah.
or some type of healing situation that's going on. I think the downside to it is that I wouldn't say all of them, but most of them don't doing it traditional. There are some traditional, indigenous, earth-based, quote unquote, guidelines that you have to do that, and I think that's why it's half and half. People get a good experience or a bad experience from it, and you know, part of the time people have to come to see me afterwards or later on because they had a bad experience and they didn't know what happened. And when you're not, you know, dogging the person who put it together and you got them in touch with their own bridge to the plant spirit world, but you know, that's part of what the shamanic practice does is they come in and clean up the mess, you know. And
Hmm.
so and then at that point the person has some vested interest in saying, oh, it isn't just a one-time thing, or I can take this like another pill. I mean, it's not like you take it. You know, I'm going to take some painkillers for this for a while, or some aspirin for this for a while. That type of plant spirit medicine changes you, and usually it's a beneficial thing. Most of the time, people don't know what's hit them till like 6 months later, and they go, "Wow, why am I going on this?" Because it's finally percolated to that cell.
Hmm.
You know, permission or no permission. Yeah.
And okay, so as a shaman, how much information do you get from a plant?
Like, what do you mean?
Like when you look at a plant, when you use a plant, um, it's it's like a map of medicine. A plant
Yeah.
to me,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
So how do you get to the point where you can say, okay, if somebody has a certain constitution and they have a certain ailment, like you can't always use the same plant for that person's ailment if they have the same ailment but a different constitution. Does that make any sense?
So
Uh,
that's a great, you know, I was going to answer it a different way till you said that. I said, if you're like what I call the arena rock shaman, and I don't think they're in it around anymore, but back in the 1880s till about 1820, there were, you know, in the Southwest United States, you had a guy named El Niño Fidencio. He was there in Mexico, Teresa Urea, who was in Arizona, and Don Pedro Jaramillo in South Texas. These people treated like 500 people a day, and they would use the same plant for 10 different types of ailments.
hmm.
10 types of things. And these are document. I mean, it's like, wow. You know, my great grandma was an assistant to Don Pedro Jaramillo's, and his shrine is
It
there.
sounds like you're talking about a panacea.
But it's the practitioner is doing it, and they're just using the plant as the catalyst. Do you see what I'm saying?
So how much of that is the placebo effect?
Like, what do you mean with the placebo effect?
Well, okay, if you believe your practitioner knows what he's talking about just because he's, say, a quote-unquote shaman, and he gives you a plant that can be used for many ailments, and it works, I mean, there's an element of, you could suggest there's an element of the placebo effect going on there.
Yeah, and like a whole faith-based type of thing. You could say the same thing about if a
Yes,
surgeon said this surgery is going to help you.
exactly.
Surgery is not going to help you because they did a study in Portland about that, and when they found the results early on, they stopped the study very quickly.
So
'Cause that
I guess
wasn't-
my question simplified would be, how much aware of that placebo effect is shamanism, and does it use that to its advantage?
I think I think in some cases it can use that to the advantage, but I think placebo within itself in the first studies, and it took a wrong interpretation because the person who actually, I forgot his name, it was an Italian name that did it, but the placebo, he wasn't trying to say, oh, this thing happens anyway. He said, there's something else occurring we can't quantify. Can't find out what this is. And then it took a very hard right turn, and the drug company said, yeah, whatever. We can use this as, okay, if it's 40%, it's not going to kill you 40% of the time. We're going to approve it for drugs. I mean, that's what, unfortunately, what they've used that standard for. And people would always, they say, oh, well, that's just placebo. I said, and how the hell does that make it any worse? Because it's got hypothetically no side effects.
Right.
It's relieved this, and you're out of the drug selling product at that point. Who are you trying to prove this to? I think the idea of the panacea, I think, can work in some cases, but that's looking at it in a vacuum. Usually when it happens, there's a ceremony and ritual involved. It isn't just you're going to the drugstore and saying, hey man, this will help you. Because, 40% of the time, according to drug companies, so what does that really mean in the bigger picture? I think the shaman, so to speak, is one who is educated, would know when you're using that kind of thing. They have to use their own juice.
Right.
Like, I'm going to give them dandelion because of this, or I'm going to give them chamomile because of this, or I'm going to give them a combination of mint and chamomile for this, or
Right.
whatever it is. So, or if you're looking at it from the East Asian perspective, you need one base formula for this plus 2 additional herbs. So it just depends on the container or framework you're looking at. But even in China, even Japan, you have that panacea thing, but it is really about the person who's in that deeper shamanic river that do that to a person to help the person safely. If not, those shamans burn out very quickly, and yeah, so it's not always the thing about where a person says it's the placebo. I said, how do you know what the placebo really is? Because if you're referring to, oh, this is what happened, if you look at the study, and there's a sub-discipline that looks at this when it comes to pain, because I specialized in pain.
Right.
Pain
Okay.
and that was always a good discussion. I said, what does that mean? And it always happened at every conference. Well, that's Gonzo's job because he's the shaman here.
Interesting. Yeah.
We know that there's something else really happening when you're looking under the hood of the so-called placebo effect. And, but that's not good for copying. It's not good for clickbait. It's not good for a lot of things. So,
Yeah, but at the same time, I think the placebo effect maybe has a stigma to it that isn't warranted, because I think it can actually be useful.
I think so too, absolutely. And I think people, that's where they like to throw basically out the the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah.
And they're moving the goalpost every time, and it's a very weird thing when people come into discuss. I said, let's keep it back to the shamanic thing for a minute. What kind of spirit is running through you right now that is asking that question? Who's actually influencing you on this? Where do you come up with this? And it isn't like attacking them. I said, no, I'd like to know because I named well, I just want to know. I said, I want to know a lot about a lot of things, but people don't usually wander around saying, oh, what's the placebo effect? And do you see what I'm saying? There's a very specific thing to that. And usually when, half the time
it's almost like they use the placebo effect to,
Yeah.
it's almost like they use the placebo effect to discount shamanism, or the healing aspects of shaman. Oh, that's just the placebo effect.
What I'm finding is that they asked me the placebo question for themselves, so they get permission to use shamanic.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really what it is usually about. When people come in and they
Wow.
say, it's just placebo. I said, that's great. Then we're going to use shamanism for everything. And we want 100% reimbursement from Medicare and Medicaid because if you're saying this is what it is,
Oh,
then you
that's
give
so
us the underlying
ridiculous.
mechanism of action. Well, no. I said, you can't have it both ways, dude. You
Wow.
have a bona fide clinical scientist. You can't say, well, you can't use this because it's this. I say, great. Then how does it work? Well, we don't know. Then how can you tell me something I can or cannot do if you don't know how it works to begin with?
Right.
Yeah. So, like I said, honestly, I think for people, if especially speaking to them when they're talking to me personally, I can't speak for other people. When they're talking to a real shaman, a real curandero, a real medicine man, even if they wanna, or if they're talking to my grandma, let's put it that way. If my
Okay.
grandma's still alive, they'd be talking to her. They probably wouldn't even broach the subject about placebo because they don't want to
Right.
cursed or whatever they're afraid of. But even the ones that are silly enough to even ask that kind of thing, I think they're looking for permission for them to believe in something that they've experienced and they don't know what the hell to do with it because
Yeah.
their colleague's going to say, man, you need to go on higher medication or you can't be doing this job in the lab or whatever it is. I think there is an element of fear that they're trying to address. And typically, when people don't have the tools, they just double down, man. They become narcissists. They start gaslighting the
Yeah.
whole nine yards, and then that's where you get. But I'm finding more and more when they address the idea of placebo, I think they just want to give themselves their own personal permission, and this is, more for themselves than anything. But
Yeah, it totally is.
you're going to always have people say, "Oh, I gotcha for what?" If that's true, then let's make this the standard, and then there's a lot of backpedaling all of a sudden, and then you find out like the skeptics. They used to have all these guys that would say, what was it, Quack Watch, is I think it was what it was called on the internet, and turns out that guy was funded by Merck and GlaxoSmithKline
Oh,
because
wow.
he threw the wrong MDs in California, and when they hit the discovery thing,
How
the
convenient.
the judge was going to freeze his bank accounts. The IRS got involved.
Of course.
That's when he said, "Oh, sorry, I was a psychiatrist for a year in Pennsylvania or whatever it was, saw 9 people, and that's it. And I've been bankrolled by pharma ever since."
And
But
so,
yeah.
what other kinds of resistance or backlash does shamanism get in 2025? We're supposed to be an accepting, society, open to different ways of thinking, and what kinds of, like, are you guys? Do you feel like you guys are being suppressed or anything like that? Because it seems to me that if you want to learn anything about shamanism, there's not a lot out there to to trust, especially in today's AI world.
Right.
What kinds of obstacles have you had to overcome in getting your you have obviously like some kind of a practice, and people come to you for advice and healing and stuff like that, and I would like you to get into that more later. Could you just get into what kinds of maybe legal or governmental obstacles that you've encountered?
Absolutely. So I think, speaking as a Native American healer, there's always legal and obstacles, whether they come from the medical world,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of judicial world, legal law enforcement, that kind of thing. If you're a healer that's gets popular or whatever like that, you're going to get a lot of backlash, and unfortunately at times. And I always try to step back and think, wow, are they really out to really do me in? Yeah, they even say so. However, if you're a shaman and worth your so-called sage, so to speak, then you know that what is the bigger expression of what's going on, and it is that destroy energy. In everyday terms, that destroy energy always expresses itself as, yes, we are being oppressed. Yes, people don't want us talking about ghosts and haunted things and people's spirits or whatever, because I think they're afraid down the road that the ghosts are going to get lawyers and sue everybody or whatever. So I think the main thing is that when you're seeing this kind of oppression going on, it has not gone away. They burned the ladies there in Salem, Massachusetts. They
Mm-hmm.
Indian people for a long time. The last persecution of a curandero in the United States, they nailed that guy to a cross, and that was in 1915 in San Diego, Texas, and that's in South Texas. And unfortunately, that was one of my relatives, and that happened for a number of reasons.
Wow.
They thought he was causing all kinds of bad things with her, so that's how they handled the law back then, so to speak. I've known many people where that we're under constant a microscope and persecution of this. But at one point, you know, you just say you don't care. You say, man, guess what? I am right with spirit. I am right with God. I am right with Creator. This is what we're doing for our people, and this is a spiritual practice. You're not telling someone medical advice. You're not telling someone to inject themselves with things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are so many other things that that they typically want to project on a whole group of people. And me, I'm saying governmental stuff, whether it be state or federal. I think the bigger issue to really speak about is where does that flow really happen and what the biggest threat is. I still think it is that people, the biggest threat is that they're still afraid. You still have people who think that we worship the devil. That
Do you think that shamanistic practices could pose a threat on the profits of big pharma?
you know, I have a cynical way of looking at it. I think I honestly I don't think it can per se because big pharma's got a lot more going on and things that we don't know. Because remember,
That's probably a whole other show, man.
yeah, it's a whole other show. But I would think if big pharma, if you're listening out there, you would want to sponsor me. You know, give me some money, give me some
Exactly.
Post-it, little pencils, anything. But all joking aside, no, I think we're a rounding error when it comes to that thing because they know the system is
Yeah.
there to do something else, and that thing is called exploitation and
Yes.
exploit people and divide and conquer and make them honestly a product, you know. And if people say, "Well, I get this for free," nothing, everything's for free. I said, if you think that a service on the internet is free, that means you are the product.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but circling back to the historical component of it is that you always have people like myself vilified one way or another, not because maybe it's because they're jealous or they did me wrong or whatever it is, but I think it's that bigger fear of things. And I don't know, I think it used to be that, oh, they're just afraid of their own selfish whatever, but I really think that the one thing, if you're a shamanette, you know that evil really does exist.
Yes.
And sometimes it does blend over, unfortunately, into the human body, into our physical existence here. And that's when our job really comes in. That's when you know if you know your shamanette or shaman is worth it. And typically they'll bring in a couple other people incarnate to help them out, going, okay, we got a bad one here, I need some help. You know, and so, or they would say, you need to talk to the medicine man. It's like, what the hell am I talking to you for? Why do I need to talk
Right.
to you? So it's like that's where I provide a nice advantage, but at the end of the day, as oppression goes, yeah, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. We've had so many battles with peyote and the Native American church. These are all recent rulings, you know.
Well, and I gotta say, as a white man, my impression of a medicine man was that you ask it a question, and then he gives you like a 2 or 3 word answer, and that's it. And you're supposed to walk away from that.
That used to be traditional. I think in Japanese they call it the koan. That's the riddle. That's
Yeah.
the solution for it. That's your parable, because you didn't need to talk a lot, you know. And I think, you know, movies and all that made pump that up a
Yes.
little bit more. But yeah, usually it's not like that. Most shaman I know, most curanderos, we can't shut up. We love talking all the time because somebody's actually interested in what we're doing.
Yes.
Of
Okay.
course, you want to share the world with them.
This
But
is how you pass the knowledge down.
not for sure. But at the end of the day, when someone is they're on fire, you know, their house is on fire. You want to just do the job, and maybe you need to talk for a little bit, but you usually listen to hear what they're saying, really to bring them back home. At least you start tracking. Okay, where's their soul? All right, I need to reel that in enough so they're safe to drive home.
Yeah.
Have a more productive way to look at things that even if that fear is still there, the edge is taken off, and that's where their own spirit body starts going down to their path of recovery, and that's where I think it does apply. And I don't think it's an accident that people want to vilify us, whether it be in terms of culture, ethnicity, race, socioeconomic class,
Yeah.
whatever. It's like people thought, oh, that's just a folk remedy. I said everything was a folk remedy. Every drug came from a plant at first, but why are we
Yes.
kidding about that? That person is still on fire. It's.
And you touched on recovery. I would love to have you back on to focus on that aspect of how shamanism can be used for recovery, especially when it comes to addiction. But we've got about maybe 25 minutes left,
Okay.
and there's one more question that I really want to ask you before we wrap this up, and
Okay.
that is, what do shamans think about Jesus?
About Jesus, as in Jesus, as not
Jesus Christ, like
my
from the
friend
Bible. Yeah, yeah.
Jesus, not my friend Jesus, the landscaper, but Jesus the Christ. I always tell people this. I don't speak for all shaman, and I only speak for the traditional spirit healers that have our indigenous culture background here in this part of the world and in the Americas, so to speak. I haven't met one shaman or shaman yet, curandera or curandero, that hasn't had a root in whatever Western religion practice they grew up with. Whether they grew up Catholic or Lutheran or whatever. As a shamanic answer, I always tell people, and this is my opinion too, that Jesus Christ was one of the best medicine men ever to walk the earth, because he was
Amen.
able to transform and take his body up too, where we always want to hit that a little bit more. And that's not a unique thing to the Christ body. And they have this on film in documentaries of these Japanese Buddhist monks where their body's still preserved 10 years later. And like, how the hell did they do that? It's like
Right?
formaldehyde, there's no whatever. And then, what are you going to say? That's the placebo effect? It's like, yeah. So
Mhm.
that's usually where I think that happens. I think what happens though is that there's this conflating that occurs when people say, oh, well, like exorcisms. Um,
Right.
in the name of Christ, the power of Christ compels you. I believe that's what the phrase is, and that's actually not a phrase itself within those exercise rites done by the Roman Catholic Church. There's a whole couple of things you have to say before and after, and so um, the thing is that with the previous Pope Francis, he did one of his ex cathedrals, and I got a letter from the bishop local here in Portland. I forgot, it was 10 years ago, whenever it was.
Well, we have
Uh,
a whole day now where we're supposed to wear orange because of all the Indian children that were buried unmarked, and now we wear Every Child Matters, and that was done by the Catholic Church.
right, that was done by
So-
Francis, and to Canada only. They don't do that in the U.S.
Yeah,
You know, the U.S. The
that's
U.S. says,
because
"What
the U.S.
What about me? What about me? Why doesn't my
the,
life matter?" And I say, "Of course, your life matters." Honey.
the
How about
U.S.
that?
Indians weren't going to put up with that. And that's why they. I think they put up more of a fight. I guess I don't know,
Well,
but
I think I think the like going circling back with the idea of the church involvement. I think the conflation that occurs is, oh, that's okay. I can believe in this. I said, no, this is where faith should not have a boundary or a line or a divide and conquer thing, but within the realms of these Abrahamic religions, it does. It's
you're
and
right.
it was in the name of Jesus Christ. They tried to kill my great grandma and grandpa,
Yeah,
and that wasn't that long ago. I always tell people when they say, "Oh, but God says this," I said, "There's a great book by a guy named Vinay Deloria. It's called God is Red." People should read that. They really frame their mind and saying, "Well, that's just you being aggressive or whatever." I said, "Dude, that's just part of history, and if you don't take faith as a very real construct,
hmm
then why are you trying to make something of your own idea someone else's idea. That's oppression again.
And
You're not
so,
a child of
so
the faith, you know? Yeah.
would it be safe to say that faith is a huge part of being a shaman?
Yeah, I think it's essential. If you don't have that, you're just a very good technician, which there's
Amen.
nothing wrong with that either. But at that point, those cats, man, they they get in trouble very quickly, and that's I usually end up seeing they usually end up treating them, and sometimes they come from a long place, man. They come from all parts of the U.S. and the world, you know. So
Yeah.
it's not because of they're bored or whatever. Is that by the time you're visiting me here in Portland, yeah, something else is up. And doesn't mean I have all the answers. I want to fly around and do all kinds of things too, but I know I have a unique skill set. And when a person is trying to, I think, grow their faith and become stronger in what they do, they have to keep in context of, oh, but I just believe in Jesus. I said, you believe in a variation that until very recently wanted to kill the Indian people, the Native American people in this world.
Yeah.
And if you say you're that connected to God, then does that mean you think that too? Well, no. And then we need to have this discussion, because if God is everywhere, then that means you're imbibing with the plant spirit medicine.
Yep.
That means you're in Escuela. Oh, and that's when you get to really find out, where they're at, and more importantly, they're usually talking to you because they want permission to go out of the denomination they were quote unquote brought up with. They want to
Yeah.
make sure they're able to do that and maybe be a bridge, and figure out what's happening with them.
Hey, Gonzo, would you like to? You're a teacher of sorts as well, as a presence on the internet. Is there anything that you want to plug before we wrap this up? And I would love to also ask you if you are willing to come back and talk about. I can already list two things off the top of my head that I want to talk to you about. One of them is the crystal aspect. I happen to be a rock hounder in secret. And the other one is about more in-depth plant medicine techniques. How to pick the right plant for different ailments. Could you tell people where they can find you, and if they want to contact you and learn more about how they can use some of the information that you have in their own life? Do you have like a website or
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can find me at Gonzo Flores, Gonzo, F as in Frank, L as in Lori, ORES.com. I have my office here in the Portland metro area. You can always reach me by email at gonzo at Don Pedro Jaramillo.com, and it's on the website, and you can always contact me through the website as well, and just send me a message that way. I think I have my phone number listed on that as well, and you can just text me a message. If I don't answer, if you're calling, if I don't recognize the number, I won't pick up. But leave a message, it's in Apache, Spanish, and English, so those are your languages you get to choose from if you want to leave a message. So, but the main thing is that's how you do it. I do small group classes. I do, like I said, online classes now, and teaching the foundations of the medicine wheel and how
Amazing.
and everything. And I too am a crystal aficionado. There's the Gem Fair happening next weekend, November 22nd and 23rd, here in Portland Metro, and I have people, they hire me basically on their Sherpa for a half hour.
Oh,
And I
amazing.
find stones and stuff. So yeah. So,
Amazing.
yeah. So that's it. Yeah, that's where they can find me. And I teach classes. I'm teaching classes more and more all the time, and they're usually on Saturdays, 10 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time. And just because you miss one doesn't mean you have to start over.
Right on.
They've got their own thing.
Yeah, we're temporal transcendent here.
Yeah. And I record them, and you can pay for them for the recording. And I always tell people, if you miss what I'm saying now, it's on the recording. Just play it later,
Yep,
and the
exactly.
idea is to get this information out there because I think darkness is here and it's going to increase. And like I told my friends a long time ago, over 30 years ago, we have to keep getting stronger and prepare.
Amen,
And
brother.
and the way I can do it is help people to get their shamanic muscles up to date, get
Hey,
them remembered.
this show for me has been the perfect way to introduce shamanic thinking to the greenhouse over here at groundzeroplus.com. I can't thank you enough for coming out. I guess shout out to Ron for introducing us.
Yeah,
Uh,
thanks a lot, Ron.
I have a feeling we're going to be buds, and you'll definitely be back on the show. Uh, I mean, shamanic willing, you'll
There
be
you go.
back on the show, right? You'll
Yep.
come back, won't you?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay. And just before you go, I just want to shout out because we didn't get to it. Usually I stop the show at 4:20 p.m. Eastern time. It's kind of a whatever, like a weed,
That's
I
too
guess,
funny. Yeah,
thingy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
We shout out the chat room over here at groundzeroplus.com. And so I just want to do that before I get you out of here. And in here today, over here at groundzeroplus.com, we got Chris, we got Mitch Durbin, Anaki's in here, we got Dez, That's in Focus, Mike Mont, Sarah Kay's in here, Sonny's in here, Eric's here, and so is Mad Catter. And everybody in the greenhouse, sorry about the late shout out, but I hope you enjoyed the show. My new friend and shaman, Gonzo. I'm actually friends with a shaman now, and this is amazing. Gonzo, thank you so much for being here. And I have
I mean,
a few tunes I want to leave everybody with, just to let all this soak in, because we're just
cool.
getting to know Gonzo. He's gonna be back, and I can't wait till you come back, brother. Thank you so much for coming on.
Okay, you take care.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
fallen. You wanted me until my fate reminds the feeling you wanted to be, the things you left behind. The table you thought they'd see, the way you grow and change. Are you still waiting for the sign? No one ever wanted things you wanna prove. No one else is counting things you couldn't do. Everyone is treading life without a dignified end. You love me till I remind. Seasons are finite till I remind. Now is the time.
Thanks again, Gonzo. We'll see you tomorrow, folks. Polynation broadcast will be live tomorrow from 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Getting in some psychedelic Sunday. See you tomorrow, folks. Thanks for tuning in. GroundZeroPlus.com.